Right, we've got a great guest now. This book is amazing. You may have heard of his mum, you may have heard of him, don't know. Vass, over to you.
Our next guest is a restaurant critic, prolific food writer, and he just happens to be the actual son of the actual Queen, which is handy for his latest book, Cooking and the Crown, Royal Recipes from Queen Victoria to King Charles III, out now. So please welcome Cookbook Goals, Tom Parker Bowles.
All right, Tom.
How are you? Thank you for having me.
Welcome aboard. Thank you for being here. All right, question just in from one of our listeners. This is from somebody called Ewan. He says, Chris, just asking this. Tom, I hear from a source at the Braemar Literary Festival that you are considering drinking vegan-only white Burgundy in a move towards eliminating wine from your diet. That should get him going as a warm-up question.
Well, thanks, Ewan, for that. Yes, I think there are probably lots of lovely vegan wines, and white Burgundy is, it can be very nice indeed.
All right, how did this question come about?
I think because Ewan, vegans, he knows that he'll try and get me going on vegans, but I have all the respect in the world for vegans, so you can't get me on that one. And white Burgundy, it can be a bit oaky. I find over oak wine can be a bit overwhelming.
I used to love oak wine when I drank wine. Oaky wine, vanilla wine, that kind of...
I like the vanilla, but not the oak.
Right, okay, fair enough. Right, Queen Camilla's porridge. How did you get the Queen involved in this? How did you get in contact with her?
Oh, it was a long and torturous process. I had to go through Buckingham Palace. I had to go through all sorts... Well, no, I just sort of asked her, but
Mum!
Yeah. I mean, porridge, it's not exactly the... it's hardly Heston's recipe for, some high Fulton dish. But there's actually, funny enough, although it's got porridge and scrambled eggs, there are actually relatively few recipes from my mother and from the king in it. Otherwise, it would just be like, ooh, look at this behind the scenes.
No, but it's fair enough, though. I mean,
Yeah.
we like a bit of that. I like a bit of that juice. Don't worry about that. And your mum, she does look, I mean, she's very healthy, so it clearly works. Is this an everyday thing, would you say?
Yes, in the winter, definitely, and it's very good for your cholesterol, porridge.
Right, tell us why. Tell us about
Well,
that.
naturally, it brings it down by all accounts. My doctor always says, have a bowl of porridge every morning because it contains, is it wheat germ or oat germ? Something that naturally brings down cholesterol if you're prone to high cholesterol.
And if you love honey, and I love honey, and I love syrup, I love all the bad stuff, and you just want a bit of it to make it taste sweeter. So there's more of it. A pinch of salt helps, doesn't it? So salt can be your friend there.
Absolutely, a tiny bit of salt brings out the sweetness as it does in fruit and other things.
The simple things done well to the extent of sandwiches here and afternoon tea. I mean, there are sandwiches and there are sandwiches, aren't there? Tell us about some of these.
Well, the sandwiches there, tea is the only other thing that still exists from the days of Victoria. Tea, everything stops at 5 for tea. Right. And tea is not right for us, a cup of tea and a biscuit. There is biscuits and cakes and sandwiches. So sandwiches, I find it quite difficult. Tea, you have a cooked breakfast. You go and stay with my mother and stepfather. You have a cooked breakfast, then you have lunch, then you have tea, and it's very difficult to sit with ham and mustard sandwiches and egg mayonnaise sandwiches, smoked salmon sandwiches, even coronation chicken sandwiches, scones, chocolate cakes, sponge cake, homemade biscuits, all that. I'm so greedy, and I just sit going, oh, go on, one more.
Of course why wouldn't you?
Was that, and it's 1, 2, 3 for breakfast, lunch, tea, 4 meals a day. When I'm trying to be healthy, I have 1 meal a day.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to not stop the tummy going out.
Yeah, I think that if you go to a really good country pub, still, this is the kind of food we're talking about, isn't it? It's that kind of thing.
It's solid, proper food, and I'm fascinated by the high end of the food. But no one has a kitchen these days of 45 people. No one eats foie gras these days, So it's.
Do you make it down to the kitchen in the palace? Do you go and hang out there?
I've been to. Windsor Castle is amazing. It's 750 years old. It is utterly beautiful, and it still has the big old fireplaces where whole oxes were roasted on the spit. But, they're very much modern kitchens now. They still cook for a household of over 1,000. It's not just the royal family they cook for. It's the entire household.
It's the team, isn't it?
Yeah.
Talk about rationing as well.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Rationing was fascinating because everyone thinks rationing in the Second World War, but actually in the First World War there was rationing. And the royal family, George V and Queen Mary, decided to leave from the top, quite rightly. So all this lavish food, suddenly breakfast was reduced to a mere 2 dishes. Meat was only served 3 times a day. And worst thing of all, alcohol was banned from the whole royal household.
Worst thing of all.
This was it, because the point wasn't just the royal family.
It was sober October.
But exactly, the chefs were furious, the whole household, because that was one of the perks, was lots of booze. And it was Lloyd George and the temperance movement who said, it'd be a great thing, sir, to really lead from the top. And he thought, brilliant. Of course, the country paid no attention whatsoever, carried on drinking their pints, which you need to do during the war, I'm sure. And apparently the king used to sort of disappear for very serious business after dinner, lock the door of his study and
Get right
so
on
you
it.
hear, have a little glass of port. This was according to the Duke of Windsor, his son. So, yeah, it was, they led from the top and... so the rationing was very much, and in the Second World War too.
When your mum pitches up at one of your launch events,
Yeah.
right, or one of the food festivals, what's that like nowadays compared to what it used to be like?
I don't think it's really changed. You've seen her 100 times. She hasn't changed. I think
Not at all.
her job description has perhaps changed.
Her job has changed as
Her
well.
job has massively changed as well. Most people are retiring at her age, and she's going full tilt.
And she's really stepped up to the plate, hasn't
Well,
she?
she's a grafter. She is a grafter.
yeah.
I mean, she was a
She
great
gets
mother.
it.
But when you have to do stuff, as she says, you just get on with it. Do
get
it.
on
Don't
with it.
talk about it. Don't moan about it.
So we're coming into the autumn and the winter. What are you looking forward to on the menu as we approach Christmas?
Oh, I'm thinking mushrooms are coming in. Wow, mushrooms
I
are
love
just
mushrooms, don't
wonderful.
you? I wish I knew more about foraging them.
Well, there are. I mean, I don't know enough. I know
I don't
three
know.
kinds of mushrooms.
Does
I wouldn't
anybody
muck
know
around.
enough? Does anybody know?
There are a couple of serious foragers. Actually, and I'm not just plugging it here. My mother and the king are good mushroomers, mycologists. They really know their stuff in Scotland. I go with my mother and she knows her stuff about mushrooms. But, I wouldn't. You pick the wrong one and you're dead.
Oh, no, without question.
Yeah.
The two most famous mycologists in the world of their age met and married
You're joking.
via their love of mushrooms, and they both died of mushroom poisoning. And they knew more about mushrooms than anybody else on the planet.
Well,
That's how dangerous mushrooms are.
That's terrifying. Well, that's the end of
I
my
know.
mushroom trip.
Oh, we went, Tash and I, when we first met, we weren't even actually dating. We were friends, but we weren't dating. And we went foraging with a guy called Fergus Drennan. We went mushroom foraging. And we had a great time. We took a Caligas stove out there. We took the butter out there and we chopped them in the field and we cooked them in the field.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you'll never taste anything more delicious than those mushrooms. But just have never had. Well, maybe finally had some common sense never to do it again without Fergus on our shoulder. I just wish we, you were mentioning three there. The three.
I'd say Seps or penny buns or porcini. They're the sort of king of those big fat ones that look like something out of a fat porter out of Dickens or
Are
something.
they the ones that grow in nettles? The
well,
size of footballs?
No, those are puffballs.
Puffballs.
Those are very. Oh, four. Whoa,
And you slice those up like steaks, don't you?
Yeah, and they're absolutely lovely. And actually, when we were kids and they got sort of old, they would have their sport. You kick them around everywhere because they sort of go in big puffs. And then chanterelles, the yellow ones that smell of apricots. You can't miss them. They got gills at the bottom. Yeah.
I love mushrooms.
And then birch bleaters.
Just give us a good mushroom pan fry recipe.
Oh, straight for you. You get your Seps. So you butter, lots and lots of butter. Get it quite hot. Chuck in a bit of garlic quickly before it burns. Yep. Slice your mushrooms. Bang, 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 bang. Cook them quick so the juices come out. Then you shove in some parsley, a little bit of lemon juice, and pile them high on buttered toast.
Pile them high on buttered. Oh.
But garlic, lemon juice, mushrooms. Doesn't matter. You can get the normal mushrooms in the supermarket. They're just as good.
And salt in the cooking process to get the moisture out.
Yeah, because it takes the moisture out, doesn't it? Everyone has these different things, but I don't. It was great. Antonio Coluccio, who's now dead. I went mushrooming with him once.
Wow.
And he would fag in one hand and sort of his mushroom knife in the other. Yeah. And he could spot, like you go on safari and people can spot a
He was
snake.
the guy, wasn't he?
He was the guy. Him and Gennaro Contaldo,
who's still with us.
Two fine Italians who's still with us. A really lovely writer and a lovely man.
Mushroom knife is a great present for people. Isn't
Mushroom
it?
knife is and you have a little brush at the end, and you're supposed to just chop it off, leave a little bit for next year.
Have you ever shugged?
Shugged what?
Shugged an oyster.
Yes, I have. I've got one. I've got a shugger at home.
Scares the life out of me. That just looking at people shugging.
But it is the key.
All I can see is accident and emergency waiting to happen.
The key is to have that big dishcloth in your hand to protect you. You hold it. You get it in that little gap.
Sugar
tweak,
away.
tweak, flip, cut, open. But you look at the oyster opening champions. They can do like 20 in a minute.
Yeah.
I can do 1 in 5 minutes.
By the way, nobody's getting any of these ginger nuts, just so you know. Another reason I don't eat this day, because something repeated on me then. That's why.
Ginger repeats.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Ginger repeats if you listen to this show. Or ex-Ginger does, at least. Tom, great to see you, man.
Thank you so much.